Well, good evening, everybody. Is my sound on? Looks like it. It's Chris here from the Whistle Stop Cafe in Muir, Alberta. Welcome to episode 3, I guess, of All Things Alberta Independence. The purpose of these live stream webinars that I'm doing is to answer some questions that I see on social media and actually in media lately about Alberta independence, Alberta sovereignty, those types of things. I do this because I'm no longer speaking at any of the events, and I still have a lot to say, and people still have a lot of questions. So I've been telling people, hey, if you know someone that has questions about this, get them to join the webinar. I take questions from the comments, which are already coming in. Thank you very much. And I try and answer them as best I can. Now, I'm not a lawyer. Nope. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scholar. I'm not a constitutional expert. I'm just an average, everyday Albertan who cares about this province, and I care about the people in it. And I care about my future. Actually, I care about my kids' future more than mine, which is why I'm working so hard to get this information to the people that need it. We are going to have a referendum on Alberta sovereignty, and it's going to happen before you know it. Because that's the case, it becomes absolutely critical. It is imperative that people know the truth and the facts so that they can make a good decision. That's what this is all about. I am a very strong advocate for an independent Alberta. You may not be, but the important thing is to make sure that we're basing our choice on reality and not on some ridiculous Facebook post that you saw somewhere that from someone that said you're going to lose your passport or lose your pension. There's a lot to dig into, and like I can't even stress enough how important it is that people get the facts and make this decision a proper decision. It's going to impact the future of the people of this province for hopefully hundreds of years, hopefully beneficial in that we'll, for the first time in Alberta and Canada's history, have a constitution that we write for us, by us, that limits government. That's my main goal. The only way we're going to do that is through a massive educational campaign. I'm not particularly interested in raging against the federal government or talking about all of the inequities that we've had or any of those things. I want to focus on what the solution is, what the solution looks like, and why we should pursue that solution. So here we go. Episode 3 of All Things Alberta Independence. Please share this specifically with the people that you know are not on board with Alberta independence. It will give them an opportunity to maybe learn something. Maybe they'll challenge me with a question, or maybe they'll even stump me with a scenario I haven't thought of. But these are all important things that we have to talk about. That's how we get to the best outcomes, is by having the dialogue. Now, I forgot to get a water. Usually I go until I lose my voice, and I don't even have a water here. So maybe my son will see this and he'll bring me one. Tonight, I'm going to start with a post from an anonymous participant, of course, because that's what happens. I saw this and I decided I was going to use it as a template for this evening's webinar. So let's get right into it. I'll start on this. While I'm going through this, folks, if you want to please let me know, put in the comments what platform you're watching this on, where you're from, yay or nay to Alberta independence, just so I kind of have an idea of who's here and where we're at. And if you have questions, make sure you put 3 or 4 question marks before the question. So as I'm skimming through the comments, I can see where the questions are. I don't have a producer. I do this all on my own. I even made that intro video on my own. So that helps me out quite a bit. If I don't get to your question, don't fret. I do go through the comments after, and I try and follow up with it or answer in the comments section myself. But it's certainly not because I don't want to answer it. I just only have so much time. Here we go. This is a post that was in a Facebook group called Alberta Separation. It's from an anonymous poster, which is quite common. And yeah, I guess, maybe people are scared of something and they don't want their name out there. My name is Christopher Scott, and I am an Alberta separatist, 100%. So, Anonymous says, Alberta separatism explained for adults. The bullet points are, I'm assuming, talking points from the pro-separation side, the pro-independent side, and then the phrases underneath are the AI-generated responses that were posted. So here we go. The statement is, we'll keep our Canadian dollar, CPP, EI, and passports. And Anonymous replies with, you don't rage quit a country and keep its credit card. Those are federal systems. Canada is not obligated to let you keep any of them. Partially true, partially not. When it comes to the dollar, they don't have to let us use the dollar, but honestly, do you really want to use a dollar that's about to take the hit that it's going to? It's lost 50% of its value over the last 15 years already. When Alberta leaves, and Saskatchewan, and maybe British Columbia now, by the way, the Canadian dollar is going to take a shit kicking. For sure. I don't want to use the Canadian dollar. I am a strong advocate for day one, independent Alberta, and this has to be planned in advance, by the way. Move to a US dollar immediately. Mostly stable, accepted worldwide, allows us to trade internationally, all of those things. While we're using that, we build the Alberta Reserve to 105% of our GDP, launch the Alberta dollar backed with hard assets. You know, I read someone said Bitcoin and oil. I'm not an economist, but I don't agree with that. I think our dollar should be backed with something that hundreds of other countries have backed their dollar on successfully for millennia, and that is gold. That is the most stable asset to back on, and I just think that's what we should do. As for CPP and EI, your Canada pension plan is yours. It is not an entitlement. It is a compelled investment that the federal government has legislated that you must contribute to. Not only you, but also your employer. As an employer, I have to top up 100% of what my employee contributes. So if I deduct $100 off an employee's paycheck, I have to contribute by law $100 to their CPP account. It's yours. It is an investment. It's not something that can be dangled like, oh, you're living in a different country now, you can't have it. That's not true. It doesn't matter where in the world you live, the CPP has a portability clause. And I will point out, when Alberta becomes independent, you are still a Canadian citizen living in a foreign country. That's the way that works. Nobody's asking you to renounce your citizenship. The Canadian government cannot take your citizenship. There is no legal mechanism by which Canada can take anybody's citizenship. Full stop. It just cannot happen. Once Alberta becomes independent, you are a Canadian citizen living in a foreign nation. And you would apply for your Alberta citizenship, I'm sure. You could renounce your Canadian citizenship if you wanted, but renunciation is the only way that you can lose your Canadian citizenship. There used to be a way, it was called the 1947 Act or something like that, where if you went and fought overseas against Canada, fought with our enemies against us, you could be stripped. But that was pretty much overturned by the Supreme Court when Omar Khadr got his $10.5 million after the Canadian government tried to strip his citizenship for being a terrorist. So that's out. There's Supreme Court precedent there. Employment insurance, Alberta overcontributes $1.4 billion per year to EI. That is, our employment insurance recipients receive $1.4 billion less than what our workers contribute. So we're already overpaying. If we didn't keep EI, I really don't care, because right off the bat, we would be $1.4 billion better off, even if we just funded it by ourselves, leaving everything the same. Passports, like I said before, you're a Canadian citizen and you are living in a different country. You don't lose your passport. That's not how it works. And the idea that Canada, that has been first to accept other countries going independent, they would do that kind of thing to their own citizens, it doesn't make any sense to me. Your Canadian dollar is not the federal government's credit card at all. It's a representation of the value. It's a representation of the value created by you exchanging your life, as in time, for that certificate. And really, how does it make you feel that that's worth 50% what it used to be? That sucks. Oh, yes. Sorry, folks. This hat, you can find these hats at the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta. You can also order stuff like this online. My website, whistlestoptruckstop.ca. Yes, I know, .ca. It was before I became a hardcore separatist. And I appreciate you taking the time and spending your hard-earned money that's worth 50% less than what it used to be to go and buy something from my web store. It means a lot to me. Next point. Canada needs Alberta more than Alberta needs Canada. Here it comes. You ready for this, folks? The rebuttal is, we are landlocked. Every barrel, bushel, and box goes through Canadian rail, ports, pipelines, roads, and airspace. Canada can apply transit fees, export tariffs, inspections, and delays. Guess who that hits first? That's true. So can Alberta. If people think that this would just be immediately a tariff war between a new nation and Canada, that kind of goes against the spirit of what Canada is. We're a democracy, and if and a confederation of sovereign states who agreed to work together. If Canada wouldn't recognize that enough to at least maintain amicable trade, that would be very, very surprising. But we are landlocked now. And the biggest problem Alberta has or has had in the last 10, 15 years is moving our products to Tidewater. We cannot get pipelines built. We always have trouble with that. And now, you know, our Premier Danielle Smith signs an MOU with Prime Minister Mark Carney saying, we're going to work together. We're going to get a pipeline built. Premier of British Columbia says, no, it's never going to happen. The Indians in BC say, no, the answer is no, and it always will be. There's no discussion. It's not even like, hey, we need to consent to this or be consulted. It's like, no, we're just not going to do it. Well, maybe Alberta needs the leverage to say, hey, British Columbia, every barrel, bushel, and box goes through Alberta rail, Alberta ports, Alberta pipelines, Alberta roads, and Alberta airspace. We can apply transit fees, export tariffs, inspections, and delays. Guess who that hits first? Vancouver, right? It's a two-way street. But I don't think that is a possible or a probable outcome, because trade is mutually beneficial for both parties. And what's being described here is not beneficial for anyone. Oh, question I'm going to take right away from Jerry. Can't naturalized citizenship be revoked for serious crimes or treasonous acts? No, it cannot. The only way that any Canadian citizen can lose their Canadian citizenship is if they're fraudulent on their application to become a citizen. That's it. Once you become a citizen, you can ask Omar Khadr, you could go overseas, you could fight with our enemies against our allies, and you could come back, and you cannot lose your citizenship. That was overturned by the Supreme Court decision, Omar Khadr versus Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Canada. You can look it up if you want. Next point. Pipelines are ours. Pipelines cross provincial and provinces and federally regulated land. Separation equals borders. Borders equals fees, tariffs, and leverage. Congratulations, you just made Alberta oil more expensive and less competitive. Anonymous is unaware that Alberta sends 97% of their oil south. Our trade, east and west, with Alberta oil is very, very low. Actually, I think it's about 90% now. Someone, you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong. If British Columbia wanted to do that and say, these are our pipelines, you can't move your stuff, Alberta could very easily say, okay, this is our oil and we're not going to move it in your pipeline to supply the refinery in Burnaby that provides jet fuel for the Vancouver International Airport. Does Alberta want to do that? Of course not. Does British Columbia want that? Of course not. It would be stupid. So would Alberta oil be more expensive and less competitive? Of course not. We already said 90% of it's south. So even if we lost that east-west trade, which would benefit nobody, it wouldn't be that big of a deal for us. Not that I'm saying we want that. We don't want that. Okay, next. Anonymous said, or pardon me, the statement is, no one would tariff Alberta exports. Anonymous responds with, why wouldn't they? Canada tariffs non-members right now. New country equals new trade negotiations and years of uncertainty. Markets love that. Sarcasm, they don't. My question is, why would they? Why would Canada want to get in a trade war with Alberta because the will of Albertans said that they no longer wish to be part of the Confederation of Canada? So democracy does its thing. Democracy speaks. And Canada is so upset that they don't want to respect democracy. So instead they want to have a pissing match. Makes no sense. Maybe some people act like that in their day-to-day lives, but I can tell you that nobody involved in our current administration in Alberta or anyone in the independence movement wants anything like that, because we want to get along with our neighbors. That's one of the great benefits and great opportunity of an independent Alberta, is that we could finally, for the first time in history, negotiate our own trade deals instead of relying on a federal government that really isn't that interested in benefiting Alberta with the trade deals. There was something what did I see come up in the comments there? I missed it. Oh, I want to point something out real quick. I see in the news media often them referring to the Alberta separatist leaders. In my view, there are no specific leaders to the Alberta independence movement. You might see people saying things online like, this is what we're going to do after. This is what we're going to do with First Nations. This is what we're going to do with oil or whatever. I'm sorry, but those are all opinions. They are not written in stone. This is not something that one person or two people are going to tell Albertans how we're going to do things. No. The very first thing that happens in an independent Alberta is we have a constitutional convention. We choose our style of government. We establish foundational law. We enshrine protections that keep things that give us the best chance of being free and prosperous in the new country of Alberta. We elect a government, and then we decide these things. Sure, we need to have a plan and start thinking about these things going in. But, if someone says, oh, we're just going to give this group of people 3 times as much money, that's worth about as much as the air that's expelled when it's said. Nobody has agreed to that. This is a democratic thing. It's a participation sport. It's not a one person leads the thing. That's what this is about. It's about the opportunity for Albertans to finally chart their course forward. So whenever you see someone saying something you don't like, oh, we're going to back the Alberta dollar with Bitcoin and oil. Well, I don't like that, but I'm not going to say, well, that means we can't be independent. I'm just going to advocate for what I want to see through the proper channels once we move to that phase. Do you understand what I'm saying? Don't get so caught up in the semantics of all of these things, the landlocked, tariffs, trade. What are we going to do with First Nations? What are we going to do with currency? What are we going to do about military? All of those things are surmountable hurdles. And with a region like Alberta, with people who are as hardworking and tenacious as we are, we're going to get those things done. But it is nice to see that they're being talked about right now. Okay, the next thing, the statement is airspace won't matter. And Anonymous says, it absolutely will. No automatic overflight rights means new aviation treaties, higher costs for airlines, disrupted cargo routes, and reduced connectivity. Ask any landlocked country how meh airspace is. Okay, again, the automatic assumption that everyone's going to fight over these things, they're forgetting that there's airspace that Alberta would be sovereign over. And why would we get in a pissing match like that? It doesn't make sense to anybody. It's not to anybody's benefit to do these things. So I guess what I'm getting at is I'm very glad that it's not a bunch of anonymouses that are going to make these policies for either Canada or the new nation of Alberta. But again, leverage. No automatic overflights rights. Okay, whatever. You want to be upset and say that Alberta can't fly over British Columbia? Fine. We'll go through the United States and they'll be happy to have us. Maybe we'll stop there and spend some money in one of their cities. Who knows? But it's a kind of a ridiculous notion. Next statement. We'll just become a 51st state. I want to point out less than 15% of the independence movement actually wants that. Alberta independence is not about becoming a 51st state at all. There are people that have mused about it. There are people that have had conversations about it. As a matter of fact, there was a 51st state group met at my restaurant advocating for it and saying why it would be great and why we need to pursue that. They've got some good points. But for me, I want a grown-up, independent, sovereign nation of Alberta that can have good relationships with their neighbors, not a 51st state. Anyway, Anonymous's rebuttal is, this is not a real plan. It's a bumper sticker, no legal path, no U.S. political appetite, and years of chaos to even try. Yeah, it is almost, it's pretty much a non-starter. So for those of you that want to become a 51st state, more power to you. But the path is the same. Independence first, then you would have to advocate and have a referendum on that. And I really think that would not have much success. Next statement. Alberta would be instantly richer. Anonymous's rebuttal. After creating a currency, central bank, border agency, military, courts, immigration system, embassies, and replacing lost federal transfers, all while borrowing at higher rates, sure, insanity. Or sure, instantly. Completely wrong. Completely wrong. I've already mentioned that Alberta should adopt the US dollar. That doesn't cost anything. There is not a cost to that. It's a currency exchange. A central bank. Yes, Alberta would incur costs forming a central bank and building an Alberta Reserve. Of course, that would cost money. Border agency, military, courts, immigration system, embassies, those things we already pay for. Alberta pays for their share of all of those things. The federal government doesn't have federal government money. The federal government collects its taxes from Albertans, takes it, and gives us a little bit of it back while paying for all of those things. We pay our share already. It's not like it would be a new cost. It would be just a different cost, or a different bill. And would some of it be more expensive? Probably. We probably would spend more money on the military than Canada does, because Canada doesn't really give a shit about their servicemen and women, and they don't give them what they need. Alberta, I think we should do that. We should spend some more money. Immigration system, yeah, it'll be wonderful when we're not paying the federal government for their Department of Immigration and flooding the country with people that don't align with our values. Lightning Rod says, dude, the path is absolutely not the same. Yes, it is. 51st state and independent Alberta, the path is the same. You have to be a sovereign nation. The United States cannot negotiate with a non-sovereign region of a sovereign nation for statehood. It's right in their constitution. So if you have something else to say about it, please back the statement up with something, and we'll get back at that. What else here? Replacing lost federal transfers. Yes, thank you. I do not want federal transfers anymore, because when Alberta has money siphoned out of it by the federal government in that they collect our taxes, we don't get back nearly as much as we put in. As a matter of fact, we get back about $27 billion less than we put in. So the idea of lost federal transfers being a net negative is incorrect. 100%. It's a double negative. We would be $27 billion richer right off the bat if everything was the same. And you can look that up. All while borrowing at higher rates, sure. Why would we borrow at higher rates? Alberta has good credit. We are resource rich. We have a very contributing population. And there are people that are talking to the United States and asking questions like this. Hey, if Alberta, or when Alberta becomes an independent nation, will you extend a line of credit so we can do the things we need to do? And they're asking the US this, and the US is like, yeah, sure. We like to make money. We like to make sure that our closest neighbors have a good chance at doing the things they need to do so that we work together great. So that's coming. So it's an assumption that the rates would be higher. Who knows? Maybe they would be a little higher. Maybe they wouldn't. But the assumption is always on the negative for some reason. Quebec almost did it, is the statement. And the rebuttal is Quebec has ocean access, constitutional recognition, international groundwork, and leverage. Alberta has memes and a referendum face group. Alberta also has a constitutional path to independence. We have ocean access through our southern neighbor who's already said they would be willing to help us with that. And according to the United Nations, oh my goodness, what is it called? The rights of landlocked nations to have tidewater access. Well, Canada is a signatory to that. So if they said, hey, you can't move your resources, well, they're breaking international law. We don't have that right now. They have international groundwork. So does Alberta. Have you not noticed that our premier has been actually talking to heads of state of other sovereign nations and talking about how Alberta and them could trade? We're already doing that. And leverage. Alberta has leverage as well. We have a very large percentage of our population that is very committed to an independent Alberta. Quebec, I got to get Benoit on the podcast so he can tell you this in his own words in a French accent. Quebec's independence movement was largely cultural. As a matter of fact, we've heard Quebec politicians say things in the last little while like, we don't want your equalization money. It's not about that. It's about our culture and our heritage, and we want to protect it. We are individual. We don't want to be governed the same way. It's different. Quebec lost their referendum by about 0.5%. And the reason for that, in my opinion, was Jean Chrétien's very impassioned, emotionally driven speech that created emotional responses in the people that heard it. Do you really think, that's a bad French accent, do you really think that your life will be better if you abandon Canada? Do you really think that your life will be better if you don't have your neighbors standing with you? All of those things. He appealed to emotion, and that's what lost it. People say all the time, oh, even Quebec having the referendum caused businesses to flee. No, it didn't. What caused businesses to flee was Quebec internal policy on language. Quebec legislated French language laws. I can't remember what it was I think it was early 90s, late 80s, something like that. I'm not sure 100%. But it was going to cost businesses so much money to adapt to that. They just said, screw it. We're going to move to Calgary. We're going to move to Toronto, whatever. We don't want to be told that we have to have everyone in our office speaking French. We don't want to be told that we have to have all of our safety manuals and everything translated to French. So they just left. That's what it was. It was internal Quebec policy, not the referendum. The referendum, the Alberta referendum, with the prospect of a grown-up state not beholden to bullshit like the Paris Climate Accord, not kneecapping human flourishing by interfering with our energy production, our food production, strong fiscal, like responsible fiscal policy, that attracts investment. It doesn't make it flee. And you also have to ask yourself, if being part of Canada was a guarantee of investment, why have we had so much investment flee Canada in the last 20 years? It's not because we're a united, strong confederation or not. It's because government policy was so bad, people didn't want to do business here. And Canada, the biggest Canadian energy producer ever, is a U.S. company now. And it wasn't because there was a referendum. It was because there wasn't. If we had done this 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and been successful, those companies would still be here. They wouldn't have had to flee liberal government policy, and we'd be much better off. So I say today it's the first day of the rest of our lives, and maybe it's time to do the things we need to do to make sure that this investment fleeing doesn't continue to happen, because it sure has been happening the last while. And the end of it, the punchline, this would hit oil workers. Yes, it would. Man, it's going to be terrible for oil workers when they have 40%, or pardon me, 80% less taxes to pay. And they can use that money to, do things with their families. That's going to be horrible. It's going to hit farmers as well. Yeah, I know. I can't even imagine a farmer living in a nation where they didn't attack their industry and tell them they had to put masks on their cows and bottle their farts. It's going to be so terrible for farmers when the federal government isn't able to come on their land and murder their ostriches because one of them sneezed. That is going to be absolutely horrible. I don't know what we're going to do. It's going to be horrible when, people can choose to sell their products where they want to sell it. I mean, I can't even imagine the burden of being free and prosperous like that. It's going to be terrible. It would hit exporters, probably not. Retirees, CPP, absolutely not. I've already explained it's yours. Airlines, yeah, it's going to hit airlines because Albertans are going to be so much richer. They're going to be going on vacations and they're going to be flying there with their families. That's why. And rural communities first. Yes, it's going to be terrible for rural communities not to know, or to know that they're not governed by people who are completely disconnected to their way of life 4,000 kilometers away. It can be terrible for rural. Separating wouldn't stick it to Ottawa. Nobody wants to stick it to Ottawa. I just want Ottawa to be completely irrelevant. That's all. It would mostly stick it to Alberta immediately. It's going to stick Alberta squarely in the top 5 most free and prosperous nations on the planet, with probably the highest GDP per capita. So there we go. That's all I have for that. I'm going to leave that up for a few more minutes just in case you want to read through there and put something in the comments. And it's a lot more comfortable for me to not have my face blown up across the whole screen because I've been told I have a face for radio, and it's better if you have text to read. So I'm going to scroll through the comments. I hope you've been remembering to put the question marks in front of your questions, because that makes it a lot easier for me. Remember? You remember when I said that? Oh, hey, did you guys see that silver dropped like 30% today? Gold dropped 10 or 15%, something like that. This is the opportunity for those of you who are trying to, or taking steps to protect their wealth from the impending collapse of fiat currency. I've been buying silver and gold for the last while. Every time I have a little bit of money, when I sell something that I don't need anymore, I put that money in silver and gold, and it's been awesome. I think I'm up like 200%, or 100%. It's worth 200% what it was before. So that's fantastic. So you just had a really good opportunity. And P.S., don't take financial advice from me. I flip burgers for a living and pour people's coffees. On to the questions. Janet asks, I'm not sure how I don't know this, but in independent Alberta, what is the structure of the government? Like, who will be running the new country? People ask me, and I don't know. That's an excellent question. I don't know either. I know what I want. I know what it should be. I believe that the new nation of Alberta should be a republic. It should be a republic with a foundational constitution that lays out the groundwork and tells government what they can and cannot do and gives us the best possible outcome. But the reality is, it's up to you. This is the opportunity. You're not being told what kind of government you're going to have. You were told, Alberta was told, the Northwest Territories was told at one point in 1905 what type of government they would have. Nobody asked them. There was no constitutional convention. The people weren't involved. It was a group of London elite and Ottawa elite that sat down in London, drank too much, and wrote a constitution that perpetually subjugated the people of Canada. The opportunity we have here is to finally, for the first time in Canadian history, decide how we want to be governed. We write the Constitution. We decide the form of government. We decide all those things. And then we start over. That's the opportunity. And what an opportunity that is. We don't have to go trudging across a muddy battlefield and watching our mates get killed in front of us. We have to show up, sign pieces of paper, and stand in solidarity with those that believe that the new nation of Alberta needs to exist. So what type of government? It's up to you, but I think it should be a republic. Yep, constitutional republic. I've heard this before. I have heard somebody referring to the petition as the Alberta Declaration of Independence. So Jeff asks, I keep hearing that if the petition hits 1.5 million, there won't be a need for a referendum. How or why would that work? I don't think that would work. Not at all. And the reason for that is this is a binary question. The question is, do you agree that Alberta should cease to be a province in Canada? Or no, it's different now. Or do you agree that Alberta should cease to be part of Canada and become an independent state? The answer could be yes or no. When you sign, when you're standing in a lineup and signing right now, you're signing, you're saying to the government, I want this question to be asked to the people of Alberta. So if you believe in democracy and you believe that Alberta should remain part of Confederation, then you would sign this as well, because you want democracy to work the way it's supposed to, and the people asked. So you couldn't automatically assume that everybody that signed it would be in favor of an independent Alberta. That's just ludicrous. Probably, yes, probably most or almost all of them would agree. But when you're talking about declaring independence, a probably wouldn't cut it. So I just cannot see how that would work. I don't believe it would work. It's really going to motivate people and change the conversation, though. That's the key. That's the key, because after the petition comes the referendum, and the referendum is what has teeth. Okay, next. Just tuned in. If Alberta becomes its own country, when Alberta becomes its own country, will we need a passport to go to BC, Saskatchewan, etc.? Your Canadian passport gets you back into your country. So yes, you would need a passport. But you already have a passport, right? Right now you have a Canadian passport, and it guarantees you that you can travel within your country unless somebody gets sick, and then all of a sudden that doesn't happen anymore. Do you remember that? So yeah, you'd need a passport. Although maybe Canada and Alberta could make some sort of a arrangement where we could travel. Europe does that. You can travel through 176,000 European countries without ever checking in with anyone. And that is something Canada could do. Although I wouldn't recommend it, because, Canada and our Prime Minister, Mark Carney, is handing the nation over to the Chinese Communist Party, but that's another story. Question. What about the treaties? I'm assuming you're talking about treaties 6, 7, 8, 10, and 5, I believe. Keith Wilson on X. Check him out. He's written quite extensively on this in the last little while. He lays it out very plainly. The Cliff's notes are the treaties are their contracts between the Crown and that Indian band or that Indian group. It's none of Alberta's business. The treaties already survived jurisdictional change when the Northwest Territories became Northwest Territories, the province of Alberta, and the province of Saskatchewan. The treaties survived, didn't affect them. Nothing changed. The treaties also survived when the federal government, the sovereignty over land and resources was transferred from the federal government to the provinces in the 1930s, and it could, if they wanted, survive the jurisdictional letterhead change from Canada to Alberta. There's no reason why it couldn't. I will point out that all of the reserve land, not the treaty land, the reserve land is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the federal government. That's right. The treaty signatories do not own any land. It belongs to the federal government. They just allow them to use it. So the treaties, yeah, they could survive. I don't believe they should. I think that there should be some new agreement. Why do we need archaic treaties that aren't the outcome of the treaties is not in line with the spirit the treaties were written in? Why would we want to continue that? But it's not up to me. It's up to the signatories of the treaties. I did write an article about this, whistlestoptruckstop.ca. It's called, actually, let me bring it up right now. It is called whistlestoptruckstop.ca. You go to blogs. Yeah, for some reason, my hosting is really, really slow, and I am looking at it. You're going to have to give it an hour or two. I'm going to go to another question while we're waiting for that to load. Oh, look at that. There it is. The latest blog is called Treaties Were Meant to Free People. Ottawa Turned Them into Chains. I don't know why it comes up like this with Watch Now. But any of my blogs, you just come up to the blog here, click on the button, wait a half hour or so for the super slow hosting to load it. And then eventually, after your host talks really slow to try and keep your attention so you don't go watch something else while we're waiting for a web page to load. Pause, pause, pause. Not. Okay. Next question. Anyway, all of my blog stuff is there. Last one was about treaties. And my idea here is that the treaties were actually meant to free people from disease, starvation, annihilation, those types of things, so that they could effectively continue in a changing world. That's what they're supposed to be. Ottawa was the one that put chains on. And if you want to know more about that, please read the blog. Have a rebuttal to some failed Green Party candidate who said I was wrong about something, so I just responded because that's what we do. We talk. That's my live stream. I don't know why that's there. You can click on that. You'll go to the last All Things Alberta Independence, and my blog article, Why First Nations Stand to Benefit the Most in Independent Alberta, is there as well. So please check that out when you have some time. Next time you're on the toilet, bring your phone and some sanitizer. Read the blog while you're doing your business. Okay, next question. Carla says, oh, hi, Carla. I realize CPP and OAS will still be the same. Am I correct to assume disability pensions through insurance companies as well as AISH will stay the same as well? Could disabled folks make more than they are now? Well, that depends on what the people of Alberta want. CPP would be the same. I'm not sure. I don't think old age security would, because that's a federal entitlement. It's not something that you're guaranteed. It's not something you paid into. It's just it's a wealth redistribution thing to seniors. Now, there are many things like this that have to be considered. And I anticipate that I'm going to be probably there in some capacity advocating for things in the new nation of Alberta. I'll probably at one point run for governor of something because I just like the word governor. I think it sounds cool. And I will advocate tooth and nail to make sure that the independent nation of Alberta does not leave anyone behind. So my theory, my opinion, my demand is that when Alberta becomes independent, independence must not be allowed to negatively impact anyone on any of these programs. So for old age security, if somebody receives old age security right now and all of a sudden the federal government isn't paying it, Alberta would have to pick up the tab. No questions asked, no debate, no nothing. Just pay it because we don't leave people behind. When it comes to AISH, same thing. If there's the federal disability benefit, I think it's like $200 or something. Alberta would have to pay it. No Albertan can be left behind. And I will fight and fight and fight to make sure that happens. And I would encourage you folks to do the same thing as well. So it's less important to know a concrete answer, would this program stay the same, than it is to know the new nation of Alberta will make sure those people aren't left behind. That's where I'm at. Did I get the rest? Yeah, I did. What a wonderful gift to our grandchildren. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think there's anything we could do that's more significant for our kids and grandchildren right now than take control of the future for the people of this region. And, here's the other thing. What Alberta is doing is having a positive impact on our neighbors as well. There is a Saskatchewan Prosperity Party project. There's a Saskatchewan Prosperity Project as well. Dennis Modry, Roger Hodgkinson, and I flew to Swift Current a few years ago to speak at an event about that. And here we are. A few years later, they've got it. And Saskatchewan, they could even be independent before we are. Now, I see yesterday or the day before that British Columbia is having the founding meeting of the British Columbia Prosperity Project in, guess where? Guess where they're doing it, folks? Put it up in the comments if you know. I'll give you a second. I'm going. I want to go to that meeting. I'm going to drive out there. I'm going to attend that meeting, and I'm going to shake some hands and, just help where I can. The meeting is actually happening in the very place I was born, in Campbell River, BC. So when I saw that, I thought, wow, if that's not a sign that I should go out there and encourage the people of British Columbia to stand up for themselves as well, I don't know what is. So yeah, I'll be there February 2nd. I will be in Campbell River, BC at the founding meeting of the British Columbia Prosperity Project. Very, very exciting times. Sounds like a one-sided conversation. That's because I'm the only person here. I'm just reading from the comments and answering questions. Do you want me to? Maybe I'll change camera angles next time. Good point. Alberta and Saskatchewan were never meant to be confederated. We forged our own path west, away from the original colonies. We'll never be free as long as we bow to a king. 100%. Nobody asked Alberta and Saskatchewan if they wanted to become part of the Confederation. There was legislation passed that imposed a rule of law and governance upon the people of Alberta and Saskatchewan, and you never got a choice. That's not right. Human beings have inherent rights given to us from God, not by governments. And if somebody wants to govern us, they either have to do it by force or they have to do it through consent. And neither happened. So here's where Alberta rights that wrong. Question marks. Don't forget the question marks, folks. Chris, have you heard anything about us getting our Alberta firearm license? I have not. Time is running out. Yes, it is. Even if we don't have to worry here, what happens if we leave the province? Well, you do have to worry here. So Danielle Smith said, hey, we're not going to enforce this federal firearms grab. We're not going to enforce this at all. That's all fine and dandy, but guess what, folks? Do you remember when you registered that firearm with the federal government? They know you have it. They know. And when you don't turn it in, you become, say it with me, a criminal for owning that property. No more crossing the border, passport revoked, no bond, you're not bondable anymore. There's some tough talk from Premier Smith, but the reality is the only way to get out from under that is either a provincial firearm license, and that might or might not work, or a new independent nation of Alberta, which 100% would work because we could constitutionally enshrine not only property rights, which we don't have right now, folks. You do not have any constitutional provision for property rights, but we could also enshrine the right to bear arms. Question without question marks. What's with the questions without question marks? You couldn't even type question mark. Come on, KG Kennedy. Sorry, I had to. I get asked all the time, who will run the government of Alberta if we become independent? First thing that happens when Alberta declares independence is we have the current government, provincial government, will become an administrative-only government. That means they have no mandate to make laws. They can make sure the streets don't have holes in them. The things keep running. Our social services keep going. But we'd have to have a constitutional convention, and then we'd have to hold elections and elect people to run the new nation of Alberta. That's how that goes. Question marks. Oh, government again. I already answered that one. This might be a shorter one. I'm already, I got no water here, and I'm already losing my voice, but I'll keep going as long as I can. No CFIA. Yes, please. We're not interested in murdering farm animals because they sneeze. Free Alberta. We want independence. Yes, sir. Absolutely, we do. Notice how I've never been anonymous about this. I never hid behind a screen name or anonymous. It's always been, hey, my name's Chris, and I oppose what the government is doing. Hey, my name's Chris, and I am an Alberta sovereigntist. I've never been bashful about it or apologetic, and I hope more people can be like that. Because if all the closet separatists were talking about this openly in the public forum, like some of us are, it would be a vastly different scenario in Alberta right now, for sure. Oh, thank you very much, Prairie Boy. So Lightning Rod, so he says, you're right, old Lightning Rod. Scott is a dreamer. Yes, I certainly am. But a courageous one. Good work, Mr. Scott. Keep it up. Looking forward to seeing all the Kool-Aid drinkers, tail lights heading east after the vote. Oh, You know, let me tell you something, folks. This book here, this is the Bible. And in these pages, it tells me that I am to love my God with all my heart, my mind, and my soul. And I'm to love my neighbor as I love myself. I struggle with this sometimes. In that, I take a guilty joy in imagining the wailing and gnashing of teeth when Alberta becomes independent, and all of these detractors who wish me dead finally see that not only is it possible, but we did it. And I got to get past that. I'm going to pray about it. But I will admit that I am guilty of taking joy in the suffering of my opponents upon an independent Alberta. Anyway, personal problem. Sorry. Alberta needs a fair, close enough, family court system as well. Yes, we do. We also need elected judges. We also need community involvement. It shouldn't always be child family services that intervenes. It could be communities of people who are interested in their neighbors and care for them and love them as they love themselves. So I'm hoping that Alberta becomes more of a community managed nation, but we'll see. Part of that is going back to the basics in that book I showed you. Yeah. No more French as our second official language. That's a good point. Thank you for hiding my face. There are huge administrative costs to move money back and forth. Income tax alone. The government of Canada spends several $billion annually on the administrative costs of collecting taxes and redistributing money benefits, primarily driven by the operating budget of the Canada Revenue Agency and Employment and Social Development Canada. Key cost metrics. I'm assuming that came out of AI and it's way too long for the comment section. Yep, that stuff costs money. But if we're paying it, why aren't we paying it to people in Alberta? Why couldn't we do that? I think if we're paying administrative costs for those types of things in a nation of Alberta, the money should be staying in Alberta, not going to enrich the lives of those in the East and build up their factories and places of work. We should be doing that for Alberta. And we can and will. Question marks. Oh, look at these cool question marks. Interesting. Brenda says, Chris, if First Nations do not negotiate in good faith using lawfare to stop independence following a successful referendum, what are the outcomes of their actions? Well, have you ever heard the phrase too big to rig? The idea that 6% and not even 6%, and I'll tell you why. Lately, what we've been witnessing at petition signing events, specifically in the last day or two, is groups of First Nations protesters. At one event, there was maybe 12 or 13 protesters watching their brothers and sisters from their band or maybe from their reserve signing as Albertans to trigger a referendum on independence. Did you hear that? We have First Nations groups protesting this democratic movement to put a question to the people of Alberta. Their brothers and sisters, their blood, are signing in front of them for Alberta independence. What does that tell you? What does that tell you about First Nations and their position or opinion on about Alberta independence? Those who benefit from the status quo, this is in my blog, don't want independence. They don't, because they benefit from the system now. But those who have been living in abject poverty and sometimes squalor for decades, they want to change, and they know they need a change, if not for them, for their children and their grandchildren. So they're signing. Now, to Brenda's question, what do? We make it too big to rig. The idea that 6% of a society can cancel the democratic will of the people is ludicrous. That's why it's so important that we get enough people. Oh, you know what? Sorry, folks. I've changed my mind. No more independent Alberta. I'm sorry. I'll I'll be done right away here. I got to tell you why. Neil has pointed out that legally separation cannot happen. That's it. That is all the debate I need. I mean, I don't need any reasons. I don't need any rebuttals to any of my hundreds, probably thousands of hours of time put into this anymore. All I needed was one Facebook comment that said, legally, separation cannot happen. Pause, pause, pause. Not! You know what that's from? Yeah, great movie. Yes, legally, separation can happen as outlined in the Clarity Act, which was the result of a Supreme Court of Canada decision regarding the Quebec secession attempt, in which the Supreme Court said, no, a province cannot unilaterally secede, in that a government can't just say, we're leaving. However, if there is a clear question put to the people, and there's a majority, and it's a clear majority, that would lead to negotiations with the federal government that may result in secession. There is nowhere in there that says that you can't do it. It's a clear path that says we can. It may or may not result in secession, depending on the negotiations. And if you want to get a little more into the weeds there, this is in one of my blogs as well, international law says that it is legal, 100%. And it is not contingent on the country in which the region wants to leave's laws. It doesn't matter what Canada's preference is for Alberta to leave, how they want them to leave. International law says there are only two ingredients for independence: the will of the people, the democratic will of the people from a referendum, and international recognition. That's it. It doesn't matter what Canada's constitution says about it. It doesn't matter if David Eby says he wants the constitution amended first. It doesn't matter if Mr. whoever in Quebec says, no, you can't leave because we want your money. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the will of the people. And that is respected under international law. And we all know what happens to countries who violate international law and try and oppress other nations. Well, countries that have oil anyway, which we have. Our neighbors have airplanes. Do you see the left melting down? The melt is real. Lefties are angry. Oh my goodness. If Alberta independence wasn't possible, plausible, or probable, would X and Facebook be completely packed full of people saying, no, you can't do it because of this. Oh, it's just a small fringe minority. Oh, there's not enough people. It's not such a threat. Oh, but we're going to spend hundreds of hours collectively using AI to craft responses to say why you can't do it. That wouldn't be happening. Just the fact that it is happening and the news is picking it up and the other premiers are, oh, Danielle, you got to denounce this. Danielle, you have to denounce democracy. The fact that that's happening tells me that my statement that I've been making for, I guess, a couple of years now of Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable is correct. They are melting down because they know what's going to happen. Every time somebody makes a threat or calls us, bootlicking, hillbilly, ditchbilly, inbred, whatever. Every time someone from another province does that, Albertans are like, yeah, buds, that's why we're leaving. Because you guys are kind of douchebags and we're tired of being treated like this. Yeah, they're really melted down. You want to see a good one? Go watch Laura Babcock. I have never seen such hysteria in a podcast as her. I often wonder, is this some weird attempt to maybe get the treatment that doctors used to give women for hysteria back in the 1800s for some strange fetish reason? I just can't believe that anyone reacts the way that she does to things. Her and Rachel Gilmore, man, and I used to love the Gilmore Girls. Now every time I think Gilmore Girls, I think Rachel Gilmore, and I just throw up in my mouth a little bit. Not because I think she's like I don't know, maybe she's a terrible person, but the things she says are just off-putting. Okay. When Alberta splits, this will hurt all the other provinces. Probably. it's also going to slap reality into some provinces so that they start doing things on their own and stop relying on other people to do the work for them. One of my main interests, oh, hi, Bonnie, in having an independent Alberta is that it should be a reboot of our bureaucratic system and be accountable and transparent to the people. I get this question all the time. Chris, how do we make sure that a new independent nation of Alberta doesn't have these things happen? How do we make sure that AHS doesn't do the things they've done to us? Just a sec, I got to adjust my mic. It's simple. We constitutionally enshrine policy and law that prevents it. For example, what if we constitutionally enshrined a DOGE type publicly managed audit system that looks at every public dollar spent in every public service every few years? Could you imagine? Could you imagine what the reduction in waste if we had that built into our constitution? Albertans, you have an opportunity to constitutionally enshrine laws that prevent government and bureaucracy from stealing from you and from your children. Think about that one. Great point, Bonnie. Constitution, that's how we do it. Best parts of all the constitutions from all around the world, tweaked to Alberta's benefit, giving a foundation that is for the people, not for the government, like we see right now. Sorry, I'm going through the questions and people keep forgetting to put the... Oh, okay. Well, close enough. You wrote the word question. Thank you for that. If we get a strong referendum support, how long before we're truly independent? I don't know. It's the will of the people. So I said before, the Clarity Act says that successful referendum will lead to negotiations with the federal government that may result in secession. I believe they will, because there's no way the federal government's going to give me and you what we want. So negotiations would fail. The bigger the margin on the referendum and the more signatures on the petition, the less time we spend negotiating. Why? Because the mandate is clear. And if we have 2 million Albertans that said we want out, and our government at the time is dragging their heels, do you know what we do? What do we do? What do we do with government that's not pursuing the will of the people? We fire them. But thank God we have a premier that believes in respecting the will of the people. She has done it over and over and over again, even when it means people from her own side start slinging poo at her. She believes in the will of the people. Why did she not why did she not want to talk about independence at the AGM? Was it because she wants to shut it down? No. Because the will of the people, the mandate she was given when she was elected, was to fix things within Canada. And we haven't yet given her the mandate to do anything different. This petition is going to change that. It's going to change a lot of things, and the referendum will really change it. So I will tell you this right now. You may love Danielle Smith, and you may hate her, but the one thing you can count on is that she will respect the will of the people, and she will facilitate it in whatever way she can. Her track record is very, very clear on that. More questions. I like that word. Lightning rod, I like that. Abso-fucking-lutely. That's great. I'm actually going to use that. Thank you. And I'm not even being facetious. I am actually going to use that. Great question. Shelley says, with corruption running so deep in the world, let alone Canada, is there going to be something in place to secure democracy, freedom, truth, and integrity of the Republic of Alberta government leaders? And what about that digital ID? Any way to get rid of that prison sentence? Folks, I'm going to go and get a glass of water. While I go and get that glass of water, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to respond to Shelley. How is Alberta going to make sure that we have something in place to deal with freedom, truth, integrity, make sure that we don't have corruption, limit bureaucracy, and make it so that digital ID and digital currency isn't a prison sentence? I'll need about 1 minute. Put it in the comments, please, when I get back. I know you all know the answer. I want to see 150 comments of just that answer. Right back. Okay. I'm back to grade the test. Let's see what you got. Haha! You've been listening. Absolutely. Absolutely. Constitution. That is the greatest opportunity that the people of this province and country have ever seen. The opportunity to write a constitution that deals with these things. When our constitution was written, and it's largely based almost entirely on the British North America Act, 1866, 1867, the world was much different. We didn't have digital ID. We didn't have digital currency. We didn't have digital microwaves. We didn't have microwaves. So the laws that we enshrined, not even us enshrined, the laws that became part of that didn't deal with these things. Now we know we need to have constitutional protections that make sure we can use paper currency. Make sure the government can never force us to use a digital ID and a digital currency that they can also turn off. We can constitutionally enshrine that. That's how we fix that problem. How do we make sure that organizations like Alberta Health Services don't become bloated behemoths and absorb 50% of our provincial revenue? We constitutionally enshrine audits and Doge-style things that make it so they can't do it. That's the opportunity here. Other people, I hear people speaking at events all the time, telling you how bad it is to be in Canada. Oh, woe is me. Woe is Alberta for this. Woe is Alberta for that. They're going to try and kill us. Oh, we're going to be independent and have so much more money. We're going to have this. We're going to have that. We're going to give people 3 times as much money. And I'm like, that all misses the biggest opportunity we have to participate in penning the document that becomes our foundational law. That's the blessing and opportunity. And when you have these conversations with people, folks, that's what you should be focused on. The opportunity of the people to, for the first time in Canadian history, tell those that wish to govern us how we're going to allow them to govern. That's it. All those other things, every other issue we have, all grows from that foundation. And if we do it right, if we plant the seed correctly, the fruit of the tree is going to be bountiful and amazing. That's the key. Okay, let's rip through a couple questions. We're actually an hour and 10 minutes. I had no idea. I thought we're like 45 minutes or so. I'm going right back to the top of the comments to see if I missed anything. Carol Scobie says $55,000 to chiefs from environmental groups. Now, Carol, that wasn't actually, verified. Alan Adam received his numbered company that he's a director of received $50,000 from a U.S. organization, and he just happened to go on tour with Neil Young and vilify the tars or the oil sands and stand by while Neil Young said it looked like Hiroshima. But it wasn't proven. It only went to his company. Whether or not they benefit from that is another story. Right? Yeah, Chiefs don't want the change. They really don't. Well, that's not true. Some of them do. I heard a story from a friend of mine. He was talking to a chief, and of course I'm not going to say which one, but it was mentioned that there is the opportunity that things could just stay the same for the Indian bands, the Indian groups in Alberta. And they said, well, wouldn't that just suck? So they know how bad it is and how much opportunity they know why First Nations groups, First Nations people stand to benefit more from an independent Alberta than anyone else. Mr. Scott, do you need to get the moderator in here for the trolls? Well, nah, it's okay. They get bored after a while and they leave. But while they're here, they hear something. They learn something. They're not fun to deal with, but whatever. It's just words on a screen, right? Wow. Actually, I do want to kick some of these people out. They're weird. It's all YouTube people. Why are you YouTube people why are you so nasty? Like what? Oh, I see. Because it's all fake screen names and nobody knows who you are, so there's no accountability. Right. I get it now. Anyway. No question marks. Oh. Somebody in the comments on YouTube is really fixated on Jews. I don't understand that, but it's a little bit creepy. Whatever. Comments increase the algorithm, so thank you. Carol, what's to stop the land transfer to big NGO companies that come into Alberta for projects? They take our resources and ship overseas to refine our resources. Well, one idea that's been floated around is maybe Alberta doesn't allow more than 49% foreign ownership of anything. Maybe we could constitutionally enshrine protections against this. Maybe we should. I would even go so far as to say we will. That's how we do it. But we don't have that right now, do we? That's why house prices are so expensive in Vancouver. In 2010 or so, 2009, I remember the Athabasca oil sands. It was the biggest foreign land transaction in Canada's history. It was a Chinese company bought a huge swath of the Athabasca oil sands. And I actually worked up there quite a while. I made a lot of money working for the Chinese up there. But the Chinese wanted energy security. So they bought all this land and they put billions and billions and billions of dollars into it, developing it, putting roads in, facilities, infrastructure, drilling wells. I mean, we were doing exploration wells. I've never seen that much money spent in exploration. And then you know what happened? They banned tankers on the West Coast and wouldn't build a pipeline. And all of that work got pretty much shut in. And it was shut in for years. It was crazy. Anyway, that's doesn't really relevant to what we're talking about now. What else? Oh, with the rest of the world using digital currency, how would Alberta work with this? Would government and corporations have to use crypto? We can constitutionally enshrine that. It's a digital world. We went through a digital revolution, the fourth industrial revolution. It's here. It's not going anywhere. We have digital currency. We have cryptocurrency. We have digital IDs. How do we make sure that we're protected so the government can't use them as weapons against us? Constitutionally enshrine those things. That's how we do that. Well, the water's not helping as much as I thought it would, so I'm probably gonna have to wrap it up pretty quick. But I'm going to go down to the bottom, see what we got there. And I don't see any question marks. Here's an interesting comment. Instead of Alberta anything, which is the Crown's name, Alberta was the name of a princess, I think, or something. Why not United Republic of Athabasca? Sure. Guess who gets to pick the name? You folks. You get to pick the name. That's right. Constitutional Convention. What is our nation going to be called? That's probably at the top of the list. So Shane, I hope to see you there. I know I'll see you there. You wouldn't miss it for the world, would you? Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. If you have questions, you can continue to post them after I end the live stream. They will continue to go up. Afterwards, you can post them as well, like when the video uploads to Facebook. You can go back and watch it anytime you want. Please share, like, do those things, follow, but sharing, I think, is the most important thing. I spend some time after I do these videos and I run it through AI. And I clip out parts that are, questions being answered and things like that I think are important. And then I put them up as Facebook Reels. I put them on TikTok. I've got some company helping me now. We're going to be putting it up on Instagram and all sorts of other platforms. And hopefully we'll be able to get this information out to as many people as possible and maybe shift the narrative a little bit. We're just trying to do our part to have conversation in a open public forum, because we have a very important decision to make in a little while, and we want to make sure that we make the right one. And we can only do that if we have the knowledge and the wisdom that's required. So please share this, mostly to people who disagree with you. They're probably not going to watch it, but maybe they will. Who knows? And maybe it'll make a difference. I got a comment after my very first All Things Alberta Independence webinar. And the comment went something like this. Chris, I have a friend who's a aged lady of her 8th decade, and she was really against Alberta independence. And I got her to watch your video. And after she watched it, she signed. Because there was some question that she had, or some concern that she had that hadn't been addressed. And by the grace of God, somehow I touched on that. And she's now on board with the idea of Alberta independence. That's how this works. That's how this works. That's why it's important to share. And that's why it's important for you folks as well to be unapologetically Albertan. Do not be ashamed of your position on this. Do not let anyone bully you into submission or tell you that you're a bad person or call you a name and shut you up. Do not shut up. Keep talking about this politely. Keep having the dialogue. Keep sharing. And if we do that and we get the information to people, that middle 30% that everyone talks about will very quickly be Alberta and independence-minded Albertans who are signing for the referendum and voting yes for Alberta to become its own independent nation. What an amazing opportunity. Okay, I'm going to give my voice a break, and we'll see you at least next week for the All Things Alberta Independence webinar. I also will be doing hopefully, I'll sort this out in the next few days, a Wednesday webinar on the new product that I'm advocating and selling, which is a matured bitter hop extract. That'll be on Wednesday. We got a pile of people coming on board every time we talk about it because it's incredible, both the product and the opportunity. And what else are we going to do? We are going to have a podcast with Tanner Naday next week talking about economics and some other things. And, if you have an idea for someone else that you'd like to see have a conversation with me online, send it over. Happy to talk to almost anybody. Oh, hey. I love this question. Real quick. Why are separatists trying to get money from the GOP? We're not. We're trying to secure the funding we need and the line of credit we're going to need to do the things we need to do. But guess what? Nobody gets to make these decisions until there's a government of Alberta that can actually sign on behalf of the independent nation of Alberta. So these are all conversations that are happening prior, because prior preparation prevents poor performance. So nobody's trying to get money from the GOP. We're trying to secure trade agreements so that we know what we're getting into. Make sense? And a live in Campbell River Monday. That's a really good idea. Let me see what I can do. I think it's going to be awesome. Okay. See you later, folks. Or as they say in Canada, au revoir. Meow. Hashtag all paths lead to Alberta independence.